Welcome to the Adventure Library, a place where stories from every world come alive. Whether you're falling asleep, driving, working, or simply seeking calm, these tales are here for you, wherever your journey takes you. Today's story begins in the Burrows, a land of green hills, quiet rivers, and lives untouched by the shadow of war. Let us open the pages of our prologue. The people of Low Realm. Chapter 1. The Burrows. Before the Great Wars, before the names of heroes and kings echoed through song and legend, there was peace. It began in the Burrows, a land of rolling hills, dotted with trees and streams that glittered in the morning light. Here, in snug homes carved into the hillsides, lived the Burrowers. They were a quiet people, tending their gardens, baking bread, and walking barefoot across dew-kissed fields. Their days were simple, yet filled with a small and steadfast joy. Second breakfasts, songs in the evening, laughter spilling from cozy taverns. Theirs was a world untouched by greed, untouched by the fear of darkness. You see, a Burrower village had its own rhythm. Children ran along winding paths, chasing butterflies and rolling balls. Market stalls smelled of fresh bread and earthy vegetables, while smoke rose lazily from chimneys into the morning sky. Evenings were gentle, lamps lit the windows, soft voices drifted in the air, and stories were told around the hearth, tales of distant lands, of mountains and rivers, of stars that watched silently from above. Beyond their borders, the world stretched wide and untamed. Rolling plains, forests that whispered with age-old secrets, and mountains whose peaks pierced the clouds. These lands would one day touch the lives of the quietest of burrowers. Winds carried the scent of distant flowers and the faint echo of rivers far beyond the hills. Even in the burrows' quiet, there was a subtle murmur of the world. The burrowers themselves were unaware of it. They did not think of kings or armies, nor of dragons or dark lords. Their concerns were smaller: a full pantry, a well-tended garden, a warm hearth to return to at dusk. And yet, their hearts were capable of courage. Their hands were capable of deeds that could shape the fate of the Low Realm. They laughed easily, sang softly, and tended to the simple pleasures of life: the smell of freshly baked bread, the song of birds in the morning, the gentle flow of the rivers through their hills. In all of the Low Realm, there were few places so untouched by ambition or fear, few places so filled with quiet joy. To truly understand the Burrows, one must remember it as it was, serene, humble, and bright. But to see why it matters, why the smallest hills hold the echoes of great stories, we must travel back to the beginnings of the Low Realm, to the lands, the mountains, and the peoples that came before. And so, our journey begins. Chapter 2. The Lands of the Low Realm. Low Realm was never one land, but many, a tapestry of hills, rivers, forests, mountains, and plains. Each region held its own spirit, its own story, as if the land itself remembered. To the north, mountains rose like jagged teeth, their peaks crowned with eternal snow. Few dared to climb them. Beneath their shadows, ancient things stirred, creatures and ruins forgotten by men, and even by elves. When the wind passed over those frozen peaks, it carried whispers, fragments of songs from an age before time. To the east, the world turned harsher. There, the red sun set behind wastelands of stone and dust. The air was dry, the wind sharp. Old empires had risen there once, and fallen to dust, their cities now buried beneath the dunes. Yet, if one listened closely, one might still hear the echo of their drums beneath the shifting sands. To the south lay the lands of men. Kingdoms grew there, of stone and of pride, their banners flying high in the wind. They tamed the plains, built walls to keep out the dark, and wrote their names into the soil. But even stone crumbles, and even kings forget that their crowns are borrowed from the earth beneath their feet. To the west, the great sea stretched endlessly, a mirror for the stars. It was said that beyond it lay lands of light, untouched by death or shadow, realms where even the weary might find rest. The elves remembered those lands, for they had once seen their shores, and some still dreamed of returning home across the waves. Between all these vast reaches, forests stood like sentinels. Some green and gentle, where sunlight danced upon moss and birds sang in peace. Others, old and brooding, where roots clutched ancient bones and voices spoke from the mist. Travelers learned to tread lightly there, for in the low realm, even trees were known to watch and remember. Rivers wove through the world like veins of memory, carrying life to all who dwelt nearby. They told the story of the land itself, from the high mountains to the western sea. Many journeys began upon their banks, and many ended there too. Low realm was alive, breathing through stone and leaf, rain and fire. And though its people would rise and fall, the land would remain, a silent witness to all things. To understand the world of burrowers, elves, dwarves and men, one must first know the land they called home. For the land shaped them as much as they shaped it, and in the quiet turning of its seasons, it kept their stories, waiting for the next voice to tell them anew. Chapter 3. The Burrowers, Keepers of Quiet. At the heart of Low Realm lies the Burrows, a land of peace and plenty. A patchwork of green fields and winding rivers dotted with round doors and smoking chimneys. And here dwell the Burrowers, small in stature, yet large in heart. They move with unhurried grace, barefoot upon soft grass, their laughter carried on the wind. Each morning begins with the scent of baking bread and ends with stories by the fire. Second breakfasts, well-tended gardens, pipes lit beneath the stars. These are the treasures they hold dear. They are a people of habit, content to live as their parents did, and their parents before them. To them, the world is wide, but it is not theirs to wander. They measure their days not in conquests or crowns, but in shared meals, harvest songs, and the comfort of knowing every face in the village. Yet behind their simple joys lies a quiet strength. For though they know little of war or magic, the Burrowers endure. When storms sweep the land, they rebuild. When darkness creeps near, they hold fast to kindness, a light no shadow can dim. In their own way, they are keepers of peace, guardians of the ordinary. They do not seek greatness, yet greatness has a way of finding them. Many a tale begins with the footsteps of a burrower leaving home, unsure and trembling, and ends with a courage that even kings would envy. So tonight, we linger here, among lanterns that glow softly through round windows, where music drifts across the fields, and the air is filled with laughter and the scent of sweet grass. For beyond these gentle hills, the winds of change are stirring, and soon, even the quiet folk of the burrows will feel them. Chapter 4. The Elves, Keepers of Light. Before the rise of kingdoms, before even the shaping of the burrows, the first light fell upon the world, and the elves awoke beneath it. They were the children of the stars, born in wonder, beneath skies untainted by shadow. Their eyes reflected the heavens, bright, endless, and filled with longing. They moved with grace that mirrored the light they cherished. Their voices carried like wind through leaves, their laughter soft as water over stone. Every word, every gesture seemed touched by starlight itself. Their cities were not built to conquer the earth, but to live with it. Marble towers rose like moonbeams through the trees, and rivers glowed softly beneath silver bridges. Theirs was a light that did not burn, it illuminated. Yet, even light bears weight. The elves were immortal, and so they remembered everything. Every joy, every heartbreak, every loss that time could not erase. Immortality, once a gift, became a quiet sorrow, for where others passed, they remained, watching the ages fade like candlelight. Still, they guarded that light, not just the flame of beauty, but the memory of what the world could be. They sang songs older than the mountains, crafted works that shimmered with the echo of creation itself. And when the shadows rose, the elves stood as beacons against them. Their light drew darkness, yes, but it also defied it. Because in the heart of every elf burned a single truth, that even when the world grows dim, light endures. When you see the stars above Low Realm, know this: their glow is not only of the heavens. It is the reflection of every elven heart that ever was, still shining, still waiting, still watching. But deep beneath the earth, where no starlight could reach, another people were awakening, forged not in light, but in fire and stone. Chapter 5. The Dwarves, forged in stone and fire. While the elves walked among the stars, the dwarves dwelled in the bones of the mountains, shaped by stone and fire. Strong, steadfast, and stubborn, they carved vast holes beneath the world's surface, where light danced off golden gems like fire upon stone. Their forges roared with the sound of creation. Each strike of the hammer was a prayer, each spark a promise, a rhythm older than time itself. To the dwarves, the mountain was both home and heart. They revered the earth, its veins of precious metal, its secret caverns, its silence that only they could understand. They shaped the world beneath the surface as others shaped it above. What the elves wove in song, the dwarves forged in steel. What the burrowers grew in gardens, the dwarves pulled from flame. But pride often walked hand in hand with ambition. Gold could gleam like sunlight, or burn like greed. And in their endless crafting, they sometimes forgot the world beyond their gates. Riches led to conflict, and loyalty, fierce as iron, could turn to war. Still, they endured, unyielding as the mountains themselves. Their hearts beat with determination, their voices echoed with laughter and song in stone corridors that no darkness could silence. When the deep fires dimmed and the halls fell quiet, the dwarves did not despair. They rebuilt, they remembered, and in that remembrance, their legacy was forged, not only in metal or jewels, but in resilience itself. Every hammer stroke, every gem shaped, carried the mark of a people deeply tied to the earth. Masters of stone and fire, yet always aware of the fragility that lay beyond their holes. And above them, beyond the peaks that crowned their mountains, the world of men began to stir, a world that would soon rise into its own age of light and shadow. Chapter 6. Men, Gift and Curse. The last to awaken were the men, born beneath the same stars that once guided the elves, yet destined for a far shorter journey beneath them. Their lives were brief, fragile as morning mist, but within that brevity burned a flame unmatched by any immortal race, for though they were bound by time, they were driven by it. Men built kingdoms where forests once stood. They tamed rivers, crossed seas, and carved roads that stretched beyond the horizon. Their hands raised towers to the heavens, their voices forged songs of love and war, and their hearts, ever restless, sought meaning in the spaces between light and shadow. Unlike the elves, who looked backward to what once was, or the dwarves, who delved deep into the earth, men looked ever forward, chasing what could be. That longing was both their strength and their sorrow. Mortality was their greatest curse, yet also their greatest gift. Knowing each dawn might be their last, they lived with a vigor that no immortal could truly understand. They dreamed fiercely, loved deeply, and fought desperately, for their time was short, and they knew it. Yet, where greatness flourished, so too did greed and fear. Men waged wars over crowns that would rust, over lands that would one day forget their names. But even in ruin, they endured, rebuilding from ashes, reaching again for something greater. For in every generation of men, there existed the same spark, the power to change not only their fate, but the fate of all Low Realm. Among them, legends were born, heroes and kings. wanderers and poets, all bound by one truth, that even the smallest life can cast a long shadow. Chapter 7. The Wizards, Guardians of Balance. In the long ages of Low Realm, when shadow and light began their eternal dance, there came beings unlike any others, the Wizards. They were not born of this world, but sent to it, clothed in mortal form, burdened with a quiet purpose, to guide, not to rule. Their power was veiled, their wisdom wrapped in humility, their presence felt more in whispers than in thunder. They walked among elves, dwarves, and men, kindling courage where hope had dimmed, sowing patience in hearts quick to despair. To some, they were wanderers, to others, sages, yet in truth, they were guardians of balance, striving to keep the world steady upon the edge between light and shadow. Some sought wisdom through knowledge and order, others turned to the forests, hearing truth in the voices of wind and creature. Each followed a path of their own, yet all carried the same burden, to serve without dominion, to fight without conquest. But even the wise are not beyond temptation. Power calls softly, even to those who resist it, and the line between guidance and control is thin as moonlight upon still water. Still they endured, their presence a quiet light in troubled times, a reminder that the truest strength does not shout, but guides, and that even in the darkest hours, wisdom may yet walk among the weary. Chapter 8. The Shadow Rises. As the peoples of Low Realm lived, dreamed, and sang beneath open skies, darkness stirred in the east. From the ashes of forgotten wars, something ancient began to move, a will that sought dominion over all things free. It whispered first in secret places, in the hearts of the greedy, in the fears of the proud. Its name was not yet spoken aloud, yet its presence was felt, a shadow stretching slowly across the world. In the deep forges of the Darklands, fires burned without rest. Iron and hatred were shaped into armies. Orcs, creatures of malice and misery, marched forth, born from the ruin of what was once fair. Trolls awoke from the stone, and darker beings, older still, stirred in places where even light dared not dwell. Where elves once guarded their forests, now smoke curled between blackened trees. Where dwarves carved their holes, echoes faded beneath the thunder of war. Where men built cities and sang songs of triumph, silence began to creep, broken only by the tramp of endless feet. Above it all, the eye watched, tireless, searching, hungering. Its gaze pierced mountains and hearts alike, seeing not the world as it was, but as it could be, conquered, bent, and ordered to its will. Hope faltered, trust waned. Even the wise turned inward, uncertain of what storm approached, for the shadow had no shape one could strike, no single form one could destroy. It lived in deceit, in despair, in the weariness that made good hearts yield. Yet even then, even as darkness gathered, and the free peoples trembled, something within the smallest corners of Low Realm endured. A flicker of defiance, a light unbroken. For though the shadow rises, it can never fully claim the world, while even one hand holds a candle against it, and in that truth lies the heart of all stories. But no matter how great the darkness, the smallest light still shines. The age of peace was ending, and the age of courage was about to begin. Epilogue. The first page. So ends the first telling. The Barrow's peace, the elves' light, the dwarves' pride, the courage of men, and the watchful guidance of those cloaked in mystery. All will be tested, for the shadow rises, and its march cannot be halted by strength alone. This is but a page, in the library of Low Realm, a whisper of what was, and what is yet to come. The darkness will have its hour, and the light its reckoning. But beyond these hills, beyond this age, there are countless worlds waiting, stories of distant lands, forgotten heroes, and realms yet unimagined. And so, as one story closes, another begins. The shelves of the Adventure Library are endless, and somewhere within them, another tale is opening its first line. Thank you for visiting the Adventure Library. May these stories stay with you, wherever your path leads, and until we meet again, may your imagination roam free.